It's time for Football at 4 with Adam Caplan.
I have real confidence that our football operations can once again create a dominant football team.
Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. It's Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, which dropped this morning. The latest edition is out. You can check that out with Jeff Mosher and the third man of the NWO. There he is, Adam Caplan, and he joins us now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline as we are now officially 1 week away from the NFL draft. He is the third man. He is Adam Caplan. He is with us now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Adam, what's going on, man?
How are you? Yeah, I'm sorry. I couldn't hear you for a second. I just got a new computer, so I had to make sure the sound worked. I had to test it, so we're good. I'm sorry. I missed what you said at the top.
I just said that you're the third man of the NWO. There you are.
Oh, yeah, I know. Well, you know, it's so funny. Well, I showed you that I have the it's to my right. It's Mean Gene holding up the mic for Hogan, and Scott Hall's there with Kevin Nash after the Hogan turn. So, yeah, I that is something, Mike, I will never forget. I don't know why, but do you remember it in 96?
Sure, absolutely. It's one of the most famous moments in the history of the genre.
Yeah. And the great thing about it was my nephew Sam would go on to work for Bellator. He was actually the guy who booked the matches. But at that point in 96, Sam was in high school. And I just remember my other nephew, John, we all sat there and we all got it wrong. I think one of us might have guessed Sting, though, who Eric Bischoff would admit was the backup plan. But none of us got Hogan making the turn, man. How about that?
How about that? Yes, you're all right. They have said it was they approached Sting. He wasn't very sure he wants to do it. If you were approaching Howie Roseman right now and you shook him and said, "What's it going to be, brother?" What do you think he would tell you?
Oh, boy. It would be one of three positions: offensive line, defensive line, cornerback. We'll find out next week. I'm going to put out who on our show Monday morning. I'm going to put out who I think it is. Last year I put out 2 weeks before the draft. It's probably going to be Rager. I got a little nervous with it right before, but it turned out to be right because they were going for speed. Whereas this time around here, Mike, you know as well as I do, and your listeners know that the Eagles have so many needs. The more information I get on receiver, I understand the Alabama receivers are very good. There are a lot of very good receivers, a lot of them in this draft, way more than I expected. Though the draft is not as good as last year at receiver, it's pretty deep. And I do believe that they'll be able to get a very good receiver. If they don't get one in the first round, they could get one in the second round.
All right. I want to get your opinion on this because I feel yesterday during this press conference, which we will get into, they opened the door for me anyway because I didn't think offensive line was a possibility. But they opened the door for me at 12 that they might consider a lineman there. But even more so that they could move back deeper to get the offensive lineman and get more flexibility, optionality, a trade from 12. But if they're at 12, do you think offensive line is in play?
Yeah, so what I do is when I do mock drafts, and we're going to do me, Andrew DiCecco, and Mosher are going to do our annual mock draft. It'll be for a Monday morning show that drops at 6 a.m. Eastern. And what we're going to do is we'll talk about the possibilities for every team. When you go to number 12 at the Eagles, they need so much help. If you just ranked what they needed, offensive line is clearly one of them. And again, I can't implore people to understand this more. The draft is not about this season. It's not like, okay, we're going to draft just for this year's roster and then cut the whole team. No, folks, it's the future. Free agency, as general managers have told me over the years, it's about right now and maybe a year after. The draft is down the line, and hopefully you get some help out of it this year, but it's really about down the line. Well, if you look at the Eagles' offensive line issues for the future, Kelsey almost certainly is not going to be back next year. It's not a lock, but I felt strongly, and I still feel strongly, he's going to retire. Brandon Brooks, he's been available for trade. Nobody wants him, making $10 million this season, which is fully guaranteed. He's coming off another injury, unfortunately. Lane Johnson is now 30. So you've got players at 30 years or older that you're eventually going to have to replace. The best organizations, Mike, always look forward. And offensive line is absolutely a future need. It's not even debatable. It's a fact. It is.
Well, I agree on the age stuff. I want to ask you this because I looked at this yesterday. Brooks' contract's till 2024, and Lane Johnson's is to 2025.
They can get rid of both of them. What you got, though, is dead money. The issue is not guaranteed money where they still owe money. It's because of the restructures. You've got all these future cap chargers that get accelerated if you trade or cut them. That's the problem.
See, the hard part with those guys, the hard part with those guys is, Adam, let's say they both come back and both play well. It's almost like they string you. Jason Peters did this to them for a while.
Yeah, and it's funny because Dillard was drafted to be his replacement, if you recall, 2 years ago, and then they brought him back. But, well, look, that's the good thing is you hope that they play well when they're here. And I understand it can make it tough. As a matter of fact, if the Eagles were going to entertain, let's push this forward. Let's say Johnson plays well and Brooks plays well. Well, at the very least,
which isn't far-fetched,
makes them more tradable.
Which isn't far-fetched.
If they're playing well, you could trade them.
Yeah, which isn't far-fetched that those guys come back and play well, right?
Look, Lane's coming back from that surgery. I'd reported on our show 4 weeks ago, that he's well ahead and actually feels great. Someone close to him told me that he feels like new, kind of. But what we know is it was a bad ankle. The surgery, the tightrope surgery, it's a temporary thing. A lot of the times they have to be done again, and it got repaired. Brandon Brooks is in great physical shape, and remember, he practiced in week 17, Mike.
Yep.
People forget, which is sort of crazy. We didn't expect that, but he's healthy and ready to go. So yeah, but again, you're banking on guys who have an injury history.
Yeah. Well, the part yesterday that kind of left the door open to draft somebody is that he mentioned Sayamala by name and that he could play center or guard, which means they don't have to draft based on we need a center or a guard because they could take one and Sayamala can play the other, or they could play one and Sayamala can stay where he is. So that to me kind of suggested that one of these guys, Slater or Veritucka, who play multiple positions, are attractive to them because Sayamala is also a versatile lineman.
Yeah, Sayamala, remember, when he was drafted in 2016, he was drafted to take Kelsey's job. Now, a couple things happened with Kelsey. He was on the block many years ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I think actually after Roseman got power, the word around the league was that Jason Kelsey is available. And then what happened was Jason revived his career, and Sayamala, people forget this. Not only was he not a factor in 2016, he struggled so badly, he wasn't there mentally yet. There were some people with the Eagles wondered, would he ever make it?
Right.
And then it was one of our first shows for Inside the Birds. We had reported that Sayamala was their most improved player in 18 in their OTAs, and it actually carried over. And then as we fast forward it 3 years later, Roseman was asked about that position, and he's right. Sayamala can play center because this is what they envision him doing. And it does give them the ability, if they decide not to draft an interior lineman or particularly someone at center, and there's some good centers in this draft. They're third or fourth round picks. The Illinois center's pretty good. Kendrick Green. And then you mentioned some of the other guys. And Jeff had a note about Slater. Some people he spoke with think he could actually want to play guard. Because remember, Slater will not play left tackle, and he probably won't play right tackle. He can play right tackle the next level, but because of his shorter arms and his compact build, he's going to probably play guard. Right guard, if the Eagles draft him to 12, that would be his eventual position to replace Brooks. But there are plenty of possibilities, Mike. I'm with you there. And in fact, as you said, trade down, Veritucker's there for sure. He would be a guy later. We'll see where Verisal goes. There are definitely a couple guys, and he's more of a right tackle, but there's certainly some options in trading down.
Adam Caplan, the Inside the Birds podcast, the latest edition is out, dropped this morning, so go check that out. We'll go deeper on offensive line. How about, let's stay there. If they don't draft an offensive line in round one, they last year got Driscoll. They got Herbig. I guess they like both of those guys. So do they do that? Do they look at offensive line still? And how many do they have 11 picks. Do they come out with 3 guys? I mean, what's your take on offensive line as a whole?
I believe they're going to wind up getting 2. One of the 2 must be able to play multiple line positions. He's got to play center guard, guard tackle. That's an absolute must, like Jack Driscoll. So Jack Driscoll, I just checked in and kind of what they're thinking is they love him for the next couple of years as a sixth lineman. They're not sure yet if he'll eventually be a starting player. We know that Jeff Stoutland, the line coach, likes him. He wants to develop him and all that. That's great. But that doesn't change the fact that he has the body that he has. He's got to fill out physically. And the hope is he's their sixth lineman. Like, if that happens, great. That's a really good fourth-round pick. But that doesn't tell you that he could be a starter. Now, Herbig is a good story as an undrafted free agent, as a backup center guard. Or if you got to start 5 or 6 games, you're going to get away with it with him. He's probably going to help you. But he is not a 16-game starter. He may have to do it, like last year, start a bunch of games, but he needs to get in a much better physical shape. He had some games where he just did not play well. He's just not the athlete that you want, but that's a great find for them as a top backup interior lineman. That helps, but in the end, Mike, they really need to come out of this draft with 2 linemen, probably a tackle, right tackle / left tackle, and a center guard.
All right, so much was made of yesterday's press conference. I want to get your thoughts on this. Nick Sirianni didn't say a word for 10 minutes, and then he took over the press conference. So what is your take? It was interesting. There was a question that was posed to Roseman, and Roseman told Sirianni, why don't you answer the question? He was on such a roll. So did you like what you saw from him? Did the Eagles like what they saw from him? What was your take of Sirianni yesterday? Because he was kind of the star of the show.
Yeah, I spoke with some people I trust with the Eagles, and they 2 guys really were pretty impressed. They loved his energy and his passion. I'd said on our show that dropped this morning, I'll give the listeners a note if you haven't heard it. I talked to someone who coached with Sirianni with the Colts, who said that he absolutely will hold players accountable. Like, so you hear how he talks. He sounds like a guy with high energy, in your face. He talked about competition, which was music to the front office's ears. They love that. Because there was this sense with Doug Peterson, Mike, and it's why I talked last week where Doug was in trouble after 2016. He was not exactly holding players accountable. And there was a lack of accountability with players who were late to meetings or players who weren't practicing well. There was not a lot of fear. It sure sounds like, from talking to people, that Sirianni will definitely be on these players, and that is really well needed, because Jeff and I have talked about on our show since the spring of 18 when we started that there's been a lack of player development here. I understand some of the draft picks simply weren't good enough. That's fair game. But some of the guys who have talent have not been developed, and that's a coaching issue. And the belief here with this new staff and the revised staff, some of the guys are held over, but with the new guys, particularly Sirianni, that these guys are going to be developed. And I did like what I had to hear, and I think other people did as well.
Yeah, this is kind of a 2-parter on that. One, Roseman said the book's not written on last year's class, which is obvious, but he did kind of throw in there, and we're looking forward to our new staff getting their hands on these guys. Almost like we don't like what the old staff, how they utilized the draft class. We're looking forward to how this new staff. And 2, do they feel that Sirianni's background with wide receivers should help them get more out of the receivers that maybe Peterson couldn't get?
Yeah. It's really interesting about Nick Sirianni. We know he was a receiver in college. Here's a note that I thought was interesting. One coach told me that not only was Sirianni good with receivers, Frank Reich was unbelievable with receivers when he was here in Philly. He also was good with it because he coached them with the Chargers. So you have a background with Sirianni with receivers. Patullo, who's his top assistant. Aaron Moorhead, of course. There's simply no way they're going to fail with these receivers. As I said on our show before, if these guys can't develop them, then they obviously the front office did a terrible job of drafting. Because I do think it's fair game. There was an issue with some of the coaches with the former staff that they didn't either think the players were good enough, or they were so scared about their jobs they just wouldn't play them. We had said on our show, Ken Flajole, his reluctance to play some of these younger linebackers or develop some of these players, and L.J. Ford situation, by the way, wasn't just a situation trying to get a comp pick. He didn't think he was good enough. So there's got to be better accountability with these coaches, Mike. Something we really have not talked about on Inside the Birds before much, but I'm glad you brought it up, because for the fans out there, when you watch preseason games, the 3 preseason games and early in the regular season, look at how early the young players are playing and seeing how well they're playing. I'm very anxious to see how these coaches coach these guys.
Yeah, I'm interested to see because it's like, hey, we got you Jalen Reagor. You didn't use him correctly. Like, that's how I almost took, like, Sirianni sold us on how he's going to use Reagor. We're excited about that, so you guys should be excited about it too.
Did you notice that, Mike? Did you notice he talked about, because we had reported that it was going to be more of a West Coast scheme, and that's what he talked about, the routes. Getting in the playmakers' hands in a short area and letting them run. That is the Nick Sirianni offense. I'm glad he put that out there because that is music to Reagor's ears. He's incredible at running after the catch. This scheme is going to really do well for him if he's healthy.
Yeah, and I loved Sirianni explaining about the X receiver. It could be a 5'9" guy. It could be a 6'2" guy. It could be a fast guy. It could be a quick guy. It doesn't have to be the guy that you draw on a pad and say he's an X. Anybody could do it if they have the talent. I love that answer.
Yeah, and what he meant was what he didn't really – I don't think he said exactly what I'm about to say here. The other part that I was hoping he would say is, yes, he had T.Y. Hilton in Indy, who's 5'9", but it's the ability to get off press coverage. An X receiver, because he doesn't move as much as the Z, must be able to get off press coverage. He must be able to tilt coverage. That's what the receiver coaches – I'm friendly with about 6 NFL receiver coaches. When I've asked them this question, they all agree. The X receiver must be able to beat doubles. Must be able to get off press coverage and must tilt coverage. Kenny Golladay may not be explosive, but he beats coverage repeatedly. Why do you think he got $18.5 million? Because he may run in the 4.5s or 4.49, whatever he runs, but on tape, he beats press coverage. If you can't do that at X, you can't play X.
There was a lot to be made of the fact that they didn't come out and say that Jalen Hurts is the quarterback. Much to do about nothing. I thought the theme of the press conference was competition. Here's a new coach pressing competition. He's not going to come out and say, I'm saying competition, and I'm going to hand you a job. He has to say this, but he really believes that Hurts is his starter, right?
I do, but I would say this. Let's not forget, okay? This is the late second-round pick, a guy who was not – the Eagles did not have a second-round grade on him. They took him earlier because they didn't want another team to get him in the third or the fourth round. Okay, I get that part of it. This is a new coaching staff. They don't know this player. They don't know any of these players. They very few of these coaches have experience with these guys. Obviously, Gannon does from defense with his time with the Vikings with a couple of the players, but overall, they don't have very much experience with these guys. So, yes, I would agree almost certainly that Hurts is going to be the quarterback this season. But why hand him something when he hasn't proven anything over 4 games? And I was the one who said a couple months ago, hey, you got to get an evaluation on this guy. But people I trust tell me, hey, wait a minute here. Let this thing, he should be the starter. Let him kind of earn it in training camp. Just don't give it to him if he doesn't practice well.
Well, they've also got to keep the perception up that they might take a quarterback at 12.
Yeah, and I was telling Moshe that off the air that it's the same thing the Panthers are doing. Panthers are not drafting a quarterback. Okay, they're not. Why did they give up 3 picks for Sam Darnold? The Eagles are not drafting a quarterback at 12. I know it's funny though. I was talking to someone very high up in personnel with another team. Who had talked to the Eagles a bunch of times. So in the last couple of weeks, he goes, "Man, do you think they're trading up for a quarterback if they trade up?" I'm like, "No way." He goes, "Are you sure about that?" I'm like, "Now you're making me think about this." I'm like, "They're not doing that." Look, they shocked me last week with Hurts.
Yeah,
I didn't see that coming. You never say never, but I would think you got to take a look at Hurts here. But if I've learned anything in this business, when you have a new staff, unless the owner or the GM says you have to do this, and it doesn't sound like Roseman has told him, hey, you have to do this. It sounds like, it's Hurts' job, but.
All right, let's finish with this, that Roseman kind of insinuated that he went off the draft board last year and that, it didn't really say, no, we didn't. He was asked that it's well documented at this point the first 2 picks weren't true to your scouting board. What did you think about the way Roseman kind of answered that question?
Yeah, that one was for my friend Tim McManus, who I work with at ESPN for a bit. And I know, look, those of us who know the team pretty well know that it was going to be Justin Jefferson and the safety the Panthers drafted. It was phenomenal.
Jeremy Chin.
Yeah, Jeremy Chin. We know that. In fact, Jeff and I put it out we said on our first post-draft show, it was going to be Chin had they not drafted Hurts. Because we knew that Chin met the analytics numbers. He met it and it's one of the rare times that the analytics matched up to the tape. And if they weren't going to go Hurts, they were going to go Chin. So Tim asked this, and I was kind of surprised that Roseman didn't deny it.
Right.
He had a perfect opportunity to say, hey, wait a minute. You don't know who was on our board, blah, 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 blah. But I think here's the problem with it. It's been reported, not just Jeff and I, a lot of people who cover the team locally and nationally put a lot of stuff out. At this point, so much information is out there. And what the Athletic article, which was tremendous, so much has been put out there. Why even deny it at this point is kind of the way my read on it. It's just kind of comical because you can't deny the truth here. Everybody knows now what happened.
The new Inside the Birds podcast is out now. The new one will be out on Monday. You guys are doing an Inside the Birds draft special next Thursday, a week from today, correct?
Yes. Can't wait. Yeah, at Evil Genius in Philly. And we just announced also, before that, we're going to do our first roundtable with our guys, Q&A, Avant and Quentin Michael. We're going to do that. I can't wait. I ran it by Jeff. We talked about it. It's going to be awesome. Awesome. I can't wait because we learned so much from them. Our fans do. And the four of us are going to do it through Zoom, and we're going to run by ideas. We're going to go over the draft. Can't wait to do it next week.
For more information on the podcast and everything, follow their Twitter account at Inside Birds, and check out the latest edition of the Inside the Birds podcast. It is out now. He is Adam Caplan, and he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. All right, Adam. See you, man.
Guys, thank you.
All right. He'll be back next week, and Andrew DeCecco is in tomorrow for Inside the Birds football at 4 here on the Sports Bash.